Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the greatest show on earth, the Investigative Journal, here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. This is your host, Greg Anthony, back again. Sorry it's been such a long time, but you know how things go. God willing and the creek don't rise, I will be here tomorrow on the long-running show, the Investigative Journal. You know, I've been on the air for more than 15 years, and I've been preaching one thing: the Vatican-led New World Order. And it just amazes me, as more evidence mounts and mounts as the years go by, that people still don't want to believe it. They don't even want to talk about it. And the real reason is they can't handle the truth. Just ask Tom Cruise about that, right? Remember the movie? Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise. You can't handle the truth. Well, the truth is right here. And I'll bet 9 out of 10 people can't handle what I'm going to say right now. And that is this. Let's cut to the chase. Let's cut to the point. Let's get away from all this Trump mania and all this socialism talk in America and all this craziness going on in the world today and talk really the truth. Why aren't the Jesuits and the Vatican ever held accountable for mass murder and genocide? Why do they get away with numerous examples of sheer madness for planning terror attacks, starting wars, assassinating successful women like Princess Diana, democratically elected leaders and monarchs that they don't like, organizing full-scale genocides? And how many have we talked about on this show? I can think of at least 10, but nobody ever in the mainstream media will ever talk about it, ever really get to the truth. Do you believe they cause catastrophic earthquakes, jump-starting volcanoes? Oh well, I'm not going to get into that today. But not only do they inflict misery upon individuals and entire nations, they also keep the entire mankind. And you know, you can't even say that anymore. The other day, we're so politically correct. Somebody said mankind, and then all over CNN, it was like, you got to say people kind. Well, the hell with you. Mankind, they've been kept in the darkness by these people. They've been kept in the darkness of ignorance via major media outlets under their control. Mega banks they operate, and even science outlets they edit at will so as to instate what seems like scientific dogmas. For instance, the father of seismology, who was he? He was a Jesuit tasked with misleading the world to the point of inconclusiveness so that hell below might also exist. Similarly, another Jesuit created the Big Bang Theory and thus cosmology itself, which isn't scientific theory at all, because it never relied on any data. But you know as well as I do, the facts don't mean anything. The truth doesn't mean anything. And we will continue to live in darkness until these people are exposed. But I don't give it much credence. If America can't do it, who can? We're supposed to be the bastion of freedom, but we're controlled by the Jesuit order and the Vatican behind the scenes. We have a Jesuit education. Just the other day in downtown Washington, guess what happened? They shut down the city for the morning because these climatologists, or the climate change people, mostly kids, mostly suburban white kids, standing in the middle of the street, laying down and blocking traffic so good people can't get to work, based on the fact that if we don't stop using cars, planes, and all this stuff, the world's going to end in 12 years. This is the kind of crap that they've been taught, and it's all wrong. All wrong. Now, By doing so, they steered cosmology away from the point of inconclusiveness, like I said. They operate by infiltration. So pretty much every Catholic minister in a government acts as an agent of the Vatican instead of its own nation and its own people that he or she lives. They don't care where they live in. They work for the Vatican, and so do our government agents, government people, all the way to the top, whether it be Barack Obama or President Trump, no matter who. In news agencies and major public media, they place devoted editors. For example, their own chief editors have thus christened a hypothetical Higgs particle in the God's particle. Though physicists hate this term, as they should, as it's another giveaway of the amateur who lost his way in the sciences. Now, those paragraphs I read were paraphrased from a website overseas called secret.theroyalsociety.eu. And they delve into a lot of numerology and a lot of occult avenues and how these people operate. I'm not going to get into the numbers today, but I do want to say that this is an occult-based organization. And throughout its tentacles, the same thing is going on. That's why you're seeing all of this perversion creeping into American society, where basically you don't even, they're telling you that men and women aren't really men and women, and you have the choice to decide who you are every day. So in fact, if I wake up, despite the biological idea that I'm a man, I can feel like a woman, and thus I am a woman. It's a crazy occult thinking. If you go all the way back to the occult and all of the Greek gods and the Persian gods and all of this stuff, you'll see it was that mixing of male and female. And we've talked about the symbols, the major symbols in London, in the United States and Washington, D.C., and also in Rome. And that is the obelisk. And that tells you right off the bat who these people are. So it shouldn't be any strange thing happening in America to those who want to get to the truth. How you're seeing everything turned upside down. What's black is white. What's right is wrong. And there is no right or wrong. Now, I am sick and tired of what's going on in Washington, D.C. I don't know about you, but if you don't get a handle on it and understand how it works, you're going to be left with your tongue hanging out and your eyes rolling going, what the hell are they doing? One example. Trump, for example, pushes nationalism, America first. And he gave a speech at the United Nations today that really exemplified that. Now, for all those of us who understand that he also works with the Jesuits, why would he be doing that? Because they are creating two sides to the coin here. They're creating chaos in America. That's why you're seeing the rise in the last 2 years of socialism. And that's why you're seeing this struggle. That's why you're seeing these crazy socialist people in Congress who have no experience whatsoever get in there and start preaching all of these socialist ideas, because it is the globalists against the nationalists. It's against sovereignty of nations against a global world. How do you think it's going to end? Well, what side are the Jesuits and the Vatican on? Clearly, globalism. And so to get to that goal, they have to have a strong adversary, i.e. Donald Trump. Now, if Trump was for real, and if you get a chance when you're sitting around at night, go to his UN speech today. And I said this to myself just a few minutes ago. If that was really true, and the world could be that way, it'd be a great place to live. But it's only a charade. It's only an act. It's only another theatrical performance by the sovereignty of the United States up against the globalism of people like George Soros, the Vatican Jesuits, all living here. and basically pushing this country into basically a socialist, communist, call it dictatorial state. Remember this quite well. The Vatican gets tremendous amounts of money paid for you by the taxpayers through grants and other specialties that other religions don't get in America. That's because they formed this country. That's because some of the founding fathers aren't named and they don't even take credit for it, like Jesuit Lorenzo Ricci. He should be a founding father, and he is. But he doesn't want to take credit, right? No, they don't want to tell you the truth. Because even if they did, like I do, you can't handle it. You don't know what to do about it. And so, basically, what happens is they get away with murder, genocide, and it's going to continue until you will not see America as it was, as it is, as it's still remaining a little bit there. Yes, a little bit. What you're going to see is full-fledged control. And this is just the beginning of it. That's why, it's just amazing to me, and it kind of gets, I have to sit here and go, what the hell don't people get? How can they believe this congresswoman named Ocasio-Cortez, just happens to be an Hispanic, so everybody starts talking against her and you're automatically racist, right? Well, she's nothing more than a shill working for the Jesuits in order to push socialism and to create this chaos between sovereignty and socialism. And they got to do this. They got to make half the country fight one way and half the other. And then in the end, they rub them together until they get their synthesis. That's a Hegelian dialectic, folks. And if people understood that, this wouldn't be going on today. So what I was getting at, I'll get to Cortez right now, but let me tell you this. Go to that Trump speech today at the UN, and you'll find that if that was the truth, if this did not exist, if the Jesuits, Vatican, and all this New World Order stuff behind the scenes, this secret group of people that control us weren't there, well, that would be a wonderful world, he pointed out today. And just look at it that way. But anyway, Cortez. Why do I call this a theater? Why have I called the American system the greatest show on earth? The greatest propaganda. Why is America so great? Because we're the greatest propagandists that ever lived. And I'm saying propaganda for a good thing. There's nothing wrong with democracy. There's nothing wrong with freedom. There's nothing wrong with our Second Amendment and guns. But if that's the way, it was going to end up, and that was going to grow and prosper, I'd say fine, but it's not. They're just doing this now to show you this is the last battle. This is the last straw. Until the camel's back is broken and they bring in their globalist system. So, why do I say it's a theater? Just look at Cortez, and I can't believe people even listen to this wacko. She was a bartender working in Brooklyn. She's now a congresswoman, and guess what? She had no experience. You know how she got the job? There was an audition. Yeah, the leaders of the Young Turks and some of her other handlers who have Jesuit connections to, we can go really deep into the rabbit hole, to one of our friends from Turkey named Mr. Fethullah Gulen. Look into him. Fethullah Gulen. I've done many shows on this crazy bastard. Now, here's the deal. They run an audition. She's from a rich family living outside of Brooklyn. She spent a little time there bartending and then took a residency. So they ran an audition looking for a congresswoman or man that could push their socialist agenda against this long-time Democrat that was there, a moderate. They want to get rid of all moderate Democrats. And so they run an open audition, just like you'd see in Hollywood. And she won. So then they fed her lines, they still do today, and they tell her what to say, tell her what to do, and she looks the part, Hispanic, pretty good looking, can talk, etc., just like an actress. And she is leading this charge along with a couple other Muslim congresswomen who have sordid backgrounds to end America as it is. And guess what? The Democratic Party is buying into it because they're controlled by the Jesuits. They're the socialist side of this coin. And then we have the Republicans. Now, why do I say they're also stooges and also actors. Well, let me give you an example. We've seen this kind of push in the last 2 years by the socialists to impeach Trump. And they used a phony story about him having collusion with Russia, which was disproved. Now, this went on for 2.5 years. Now, guess what happens? This goes on for 2.5 years. Okay, we had a little control problem here with the computer, but we're back. So I was saying 2.5 years we've been listening to this Russia charade put on by the Socialist Democrats. But on the and while they're doing that, the report came out there was no collusion with Russia, but yet people went to jail for other things. There's subpoenas out the yin-yang coming from Congress on everyone, all of Trump's family, people that have already testified hours and hours and hours, and now they want to impeach Trump for what? Well, listen, the reason I know that the Republicans work together with the Democrats is right now we have a Democratic House of Representatives. That was staged. But we have a Republican Senate. And there are perfect examples of President or Vice President Biden going to the Ukraine and bribing them when his son was on a board for a natural gas company who was being investigated, making $83,000 a month. And Biden said, if you don't get rid of the prosecutor looking into this, we're going to withhold $1 billion from the Ukraine. Now, if that isn't bribery, I don't know what is. But why doesn't the Senate Intelligence Committee or the Judiciary start issuing subpoenas? They don't issue one of them because they work together. And that's why they haven't issued subpoenas in the Clinton probe when she deleted 33,000 emails, and why everybody on that side goes scot-free. And the reason is they want to display to America that there's a two-tier justice system. That if you're on the side of sovereignty and nationalism, you're going to get screwed. And the deep state, as they call it, is making sure of that. Now, the high-level people in both the Senate on the Republican side and the White House are working together to play this Hegelian dialectic with the Democrats. So that's why nothing gets done. That's why you're seeing this conflict, the same conflict going on between open borders and closed borders, between abortion and non-abortion. You see it on every issue. And so that's why I know it's a game. It's a charade. And I think you better get used to it, because it's only going to get worse. Now, I asked this question at the beginning of the show. Why in the hell does this organization behind the scenes never get investigated? There's a clause in the, if there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. That doesn't exist. How come you never see any of these people up for high crimes and misdemeanors of our country? Treason. Because they hide behind the cloak of the papacy, and the papacy works with the government. Now, the formula for this was simple. Throughout the years, throughout the centuries, this has been going on. The killing of presidents. The Jesuits, we've done numerous shows on how they killed Abraham Lincoln. The Vatican has murdered many other presidents. We can name William. There's a number of them who have died in office or were ill. Garfield, McKinley, Harding, Harrison, Kennedy. Many. But they're never held accountable. There is evidence, a mountain of evidence, exculpatory evidence, any kind of evidence you want, linking the Vatican to the killing of Abraham Lincoln, and that's never been solved. So how in the hell are you going to solve things like Kennedy? How are you going to solve, it's always the lone gunman theory. Always the lone gunman theory. And it's never going to change. Right now, they're setting you up for the big fall. And you see it happening right before your very eyes. And the more you see it, the less we hear about the Jesuits. the less we hear about all of this stuff. But if you go down to it, I want to tell you why. There are people like Alex Jones and Piers Morgan. They're Jesuits, talking anti-Jesuitism now. And so how can we ever get to the truth, even on the internet, when we got these people directing the agenda? Alex Jones. Let me tell you about him. 10 or 15 years ago, I had a show right after his. And I learned the hard way. At that time, he called anybody that talked against the Vatican or the Jesuits crazy, morons. They're just a bunch of old priests. Now he's singing this song that the evil Jesuits have taken, some of the evil Jesuits, like the Pope Francis, are taking over. They're the bad side of the Vatican, but yet there's a good side. Well, let me tell you, Alex, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You always have, and you always will be a Jesuit shill. And anybody who backs him better think twice about it. And I saw it firsthand. Now, CNN is a Jesuit tool, most useful tool for cooking up new wars, seeding the evil, globally. Look at their coverage. CNN anchors are devout Roman Catholics, and so are the anchors on Fox News. None of them want to pin the tail on the real donkey. So, what are we going to do? What the hell are we going to do? Is a question many, many people ask themselves after they start understanding this story. Well, one thing we're going to do is we're not going to stop talking about it. Because once you stop talking about it, and I'll tell you what, more people in the history of this world understood these guys back in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries than they do today. The more technology controls the internet, controls the news media, the less we know, the less freedom exists. These stories, they're talking on Google and Facebook. I mean, these have grown into monsters that need to be controlled. But they're never going to be, because they're controlling the globalist agenda. And all we hear on the right-wing side is that the conservatives, whether they're from Great Britain, America, Sweden, wherever, are being censored. And that's all you hear. So you hear this, it's a fight again, right? It's the Hegelian dialectic. The left controlling the right. But no one is more censored than a show like this. People who talk like me, who are much more intelligent, who've researched much more, they have no forum. And they are censored more than anyone on the internet through their algorithms and other ways to keep this message mute. Now, what do you think? I said one thing. I'm going to end this first half hour with this thought. I said before Trump's first term is up, there's going to be a war. Now, it's either going to be the Vatican handpicked Kim Jong-un from Korea, or now we got Iran and the latest missiles that brought down the Saudi Arabia oil wells. So we got a real war on the horizon. And I say there's going to be one before his first term is up. I said that when he was elected, and I'm still going to hold true to that now. Let's see if it happens. And you know what? They normally say, well, I hope I'm proved wrong. I'm not a prognosticator. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, just like you. But sometimes you got to stick your neck out and say, man, this is weird what's happening. I think it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. Sure, who wants a war? But America's been at war all but 20 years of its existence. Ever since we've been formed, we've been at war. We're the most warring people in the world under the name of democracy. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, folks, we are back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Make sure you can go to my show. I'm Greg Anthony at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. Get shows going back well over 15 years about what I call the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. You have to include this organization, this massive organization, the wealthiest organization in the world, into your political thinking, into your socialism thinking, into your religious thinking, because, boy, I'll tell you, from behind the scenes, they're a wrecking ball. And they've wrecked a lot of lives in a lot of countries. And they're working hard to do the same to America. So what I haven't done in a long time, I always like to give a few Jesuit quotes, anti-Jesuit quotes, throughout the years, throughout the centuries, and give my little take on them. Some given by actually people who supported the Jesuits, but yet played this game like they were anti-Jesuits, just like Alex Jones does, Piers Morgan, and a lot of people. But anyway, before I do that, let me ask you a question. I was always interested in the rise of China into this new global economy. China now, the second largest economy in the world, billions and more people than America, 3 times as many or more. And my question was always this: why did we prop up China? Why did we actually build China? Why did we sell out to China? And yet we have liberals, the globalists here, who are responsible for that, selling out America to China. Why are the first ones to say that people in America are racist? People in America are crazy because they believe in Christianity, that they're racist, etc., etc. So they're saying that people in America are racist towards the LGBT community, racist towards other religions, etc., etc. Nothing is farther than the truth, but that's the way they spill it, don't they? But yet they love China, right? And China is nothing more than an autocratic, basically dictatorial state that is imprisoning millions and hundreds of thousands of Muslims, does not allow Christianity to flourish, and China already views Christianity as the enemy of the state. Now, little do people know that the Jesuits were instrumental in China well back into the 16th century. In the 1600s, they were there. Now, they're still there. And they're allowed to be there, but you don't hear about it. But you know something that's interesting? Just as they've infiltrated churches here, and what I mean by that is infiltrating biblical doctrine in Christian churches to match the traditional Catholic teachings and to basically change the Bible is what they've done in most of these churches. And these evangelical phony pastors, they're doing the same thing in China. Now let me tell you how. China, we know also, views Christianity as an enemy of the state. But it's taking really new steps to influence state-approved churches in a communist country. Yes. Three Self is the name of the Chinese churches that are allowed to openly operate instead of hiding underground now. And the price for cooperating with the government suspicious of Christianity is predictably steep. Now, this guy, Bryn Lawrence of China Aid, a watch group that helps the underground church there, underground Christians that can't practice openly, says 3 self-churches, and I bet the Jesuits are behind this, are now being required to combine the gospel message with the teachings of Confucius and with a state-approved book to help them. Confucianism, which dates back to about 200 BC, predictably conflicts with the gospel message of sin and redemption through Jesus Christ. In China Aid, this group is also reporting that 3 self-churches are being influenced with Buddhist teachings too, and congregations are being required to sing state-honoring patriotic songs alongside hymns. So, is this Christianity? Of course not. Is Christianity being preached in our churches today, our Christian churches? Of course not. It's the same thing. And you can bet the Jesuits are behind it. Okay. Another interesting story that crossed my desk came to me after I listened to a report on the news where they are saying that supposedly the CDC, the watchdog group of health in America, is warning that this year's flu season around the world could be catastrophic and kill 80 million people because of a new strengthening virus. 80 million people. Okay, that's what they're saying. They say that openly on TV. Now, they're then saying there's no vaccines for it, and they're rapidly trying to get one. All right. I'm definitely opposed to vaccines, as you know that. But anyway, I was thinking about this, because this happened in Brazil. There was an experimental trial there to reduce the mosquito population in Brazil through the deliberate release of 450,000 genetically modified mosquitoes. But it's failed miserably and may have created a genetic hybrid superspecies. Oh, why do I laugh at these things? But British biotech company, so, the Brazilians weren't only involved here, is the British biotech company Oxitec conducted a 27-month-long experiment in Brazil. Now, this goes back a few years at reducing the local mosquito population by 90%. That was their goal, while preserving the genetic integrity of the local insect population. And so what did they do? They created 450,000 genetically modified mosquitoes. How'd they count them? How the hell did they count these mosquitoes? How did they know it was 450,000? Now, the overall goal was to curb the spread of mosquito-borne diseases, such as yellow fever, dengue, a couple I can't pronounce, and Zika, by releasing 500,000 of these OX513A mosquitoes. The insects are a genetically modified version of some group of mosquitoes I can't pronounce, which combined a breed from Mexico with a breed from Cuba. The mosquitoes were supposed to contain a dominant lethal gene that would render the first generation of future offspring infertile, while also marking with them with a fluorescent green protein gene. Well, as often does, life found a way to thwart the British biotech company. What sounds like a plot line of a horror movie, the claim was that the genes from the released strain would not get into the general population because offspring would die. Now, an eminent biologist named Jeffrey Powell said that, who conducted a recent study into the efficacy and success of the GM mosquito trial. It turns out that the female population opted not to mate with the weaker genetically modified mosquitoes. Some genetically modified mosquitoes even showed signs of hybrid vigor, monster mosquitoes, in which the artificially introduced genetic diversity actually made the mosquitoes stronger and more resilient, with the possibility of increased resistance to any insecticide, so they're going to hurt more people. Go figure. That's what happens when you start screwing around with God's plan. Right. All right. You know what I like to do? Like I said, I like sometimes to read quotes over the centuries about these evil Jesuits, mostly the high-level ones. You know, there's a lot of Jesuits that don't even know this. And it takes a long time to become one, and I always thought, man, I'm so knowledgeable about these guys, I could probably get through their seminary in a couple weeks. Take their low vows, get the high vow, and become one of their infiltrators, right? I know more about them than most Jesuits do. But anyway, you try to get that to the high-level Jesuits, and they'll kill you before you get to talk. If you have a huge audience, you're dead. That's why I'm happy I only have a few listeners. So, Jesuit quotes, we've heard them all. We forget them all. One of the more famous ones was, of course, John Adams. Now, John Adams, in this quote, didn't like the Jesuits, but he didn't do much, really, to out them, did he? No, I don't see much. I don't see anything, really, what he really did to out them. Why didn't he get rid of them then, if he thought so badly about them? Was he afraid to? Was he one of them? Who knows? But all I know is he talked a lot, but nothing got done. He said this, my history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported and by unquestionable authorities, and is very particular and very horrible. The Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius the Seventh is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If there ever was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and hell, it is the Society of Ignatius Loyola. Well, then how come they've grown so much in this country and everybody respects them? I don't hear the mainstream media ever give that quote about John Adams, and I don't know why John Adams didn't do more back then. He had a lot of power. He knew Lorenzo Ricci. He had to. Didn't he do anything there? He also said these Jesuits, well, let's leave it at that. So anyway, he mentions about this revival of the Jesuits after they were supposedly banned by the Vatican. Remember that story? I don't believe it. Maybe publicly they were banned, and Lorenzo Ricci was put in jail and killed, but I don't think that really happened. I think that basically it was a plot. It happened right around the Revolutionary War, and it was a plot basically to quelch the fears of the patriots in America who knew back then the story that we don't want these guys here in America. We know what they already did in Europe. So when they heard overseas that the Jesuits were now banned and gone, they said, our enemy's dead. But what does Lorenzo Ricci, what does he say? Remember they were the first ones to translate Sun Tzu's Art of War? They said you're the strongest when the enemy thinks you're the weakest. And so I think that there's a good possibility that they planned this downfall of the Jesuits and then planned to fake Lurici's death, bring him to America to sow the final seeds of this of the new government, of the new Constitution that opened the door for the Vatican and the Jesuits to legally enter this country, because at that time, a Catholic was not allowed to hold office. Jesuits were not allowed here. But it's really funny that the richest person in the country at that time was a Jesuit, owned all the land where Washington, D.C. is today. And we say they don't control. They didn't control the country, even back then. So, why didn't Adams do more, is my question. I guess we should ask somebody. We should ask our eminent scholars who write history, that really write Jesuit, revised history. They don't write the truth. And you can just look at the work of Charles Thomson, who was he was the computer scribe back then. They didn't have computers, or he had to write down everything, and he knew everything. And we know what Charles Thomson said about the agency of providence who controls this country, and why the leaders back then did not want to mention anything, or he didn't want to mention anything, the truth behind the Revolutionary War, because he thought that it would denigrate the names of these great people, and he hoped that the leaders in the future would get smart and get rid of these people, but that never happened. They got stronger. And Thomson said you can dedicate the agency of providence to the creation of America. And he was a man back then was called the Mountain of Truth. If you want to get the truth, go to Charles Thomson. He knew everything. And guess what the agency of providence really means? Providence means, back then, it was used in terms of God. When you say providence, you said God. Agency means the agent of God on earth. And who was that? That was the Vatican here. And he pointed it out. But you never hear that. And you never will. So my question about John Adams' quote is, why didn't he do more? Now, we did have a guy back in 1791 to 1872. He was the inventor of our telegraph. And he wrote a book. I mean, he invented the telegraph. Can you imagine? He was a genius. I mean, back then, that was a big deal. And Samuel Morse knew what was happening in this country. He died in 1872. He saw what was going on. After he was born in 1791, he saw the creepiness of this Vatican organization in America just getting its feet wet here after they were allowed in by the passage of the Freedom of Religion, portion of our Constitution. And so, taking his interest away from the telegraph and other inventions, he takes a boat to Rome and spends a number of months there researching a book he wrote called The Foreign Conspiracy Against the Liberties of the United States. And in a nutshell, he said this: I've learned most of all from the Jesuit order. So far, there has been nothing more imposing on earth than the hierarchical organization of the Catholic Church. A good part of that organization I've transported direct to my own party. Okay, now let me go back to what he said, because I read the wrong quote. Yes, I do make mistakes. I'll get to the next one. He said this: the Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order, with superadded features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous. So here we got this great inventor. I apologize for reading the wrong quote, but I'll get to that quote because it's really interesting. Here we have this guy in 1791 to 1872 openly in a book telling us the truth about this organization. Yeah. And guess what? Nobody reads it anymore. People back then knew, and they were still trying to fight against it. I.e., that's why they killed Abe Lincoln. So, has this really changed You know, one of the biggest arguments that people make when I say these things is that they say, well, that's the way they were back then. And, you know, they're different now. Let me tell you something. That is the worst mistake you'll ever make in your life. They've not only gotten stronger and more diabolical over the years, they never change, and they never will. And so the only thing that's changed is that they've changed American history, they've changed the Bible, and they've changed most everything about what you believe in the world. They've created a real fantasy world for you to really not ever get to the truth that we get on this show. And so it's good sometimes to look back at what people really knew back then and what people don't know today. And the more the years pass, the less people are going to know, because the way they've controlled technology, our government, our educational system, all geared to keep you from these simple stories, really. Let me read you the quote that I misread. And this is from a guy, I won't tell you who it's from, but you'll know by the end of it. And he said, I've learned most of all from the Jesuit order. I've learned from them. They are my mentors. So far, there has been nothing more imposing on earth than the organization of the Catholic Church. A good part of that organization I've transported directly to my own party. The Catholic Church must be held up as an example. I will tell you a secret. I am founding an order in Himmler, who would become the head of the Nazi Party. I see as our Ignatius Loyola, the Jesuit founder. Now that's a direct quote from Adolf Hitler. So have they changed? Well, now we're moving into the 40s, and they don't seem to have changed. And I could go on. I could go back in time and give you some quotes by Napoleon, give you some quotes by Marquis de Lafayette, Pope Clement XIV, Abraham Lincoln himself, who stated this: the war, the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865 would have never been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. Now, most people, even today, in Washington, respect Abraham Lincoln. There's a big, huge statue of Lincoln, right? They talk about him. But do they ever tell you the truth about why he was killed, about what he was really fighting against? Do they ever tell you the truth about that one trial where he represented a man falsely accused, a Catholic priest falsely accused of rape, and how the Jesuits were there and basically falsified all the evidence to get rid of this Catholic priest because he was telling the truth about them? And guess who came to his rescue? Lincoln. No one tells you that. That's a court case that's, you can't find that case written anywhere, but it happened. And the closest thing I found was a book written by Burke McCarty in 1921 about this story. And that wasn't too far after what happened. So we have a history of this country that's really not the truth. We have things that are going on today that people don't understand where they come from. And it's easy when the history that you get in college in America that I got, the history that I got in high school, the history on the basis of our legal system in law school, doesn't really ever get to the truth of really what happened. And that to me upsets me. And I once said many times, I've said it a few times, that I should write my university and get all my money back for those classes in history, American history, world history, all that stuff, because they never told me anything but what they wanted me to learn. That wasn't the truth. Now, I asked a couple guys from Canada, and they had a little bit different spin on American history. I found that interesting. So anyway, we're caught in this problem of everyone searching for these answers because the world is, to me, going to hell in a handbasket really fast. I haven't seen changes like this. I mean, in 40 years, I'm looking back at the way life was in the 60s here in America in a much different place. To me, it's not the same world, the same country, the same, things were, I don't know, a lot different than they are today, man. And it's really what's going on right now in front of your eyes, this battle between globalism and sovereignty. And you're going to see it increase and increase and increase. Now, let's read just one more quote and end the show. Okay? How about F. Tupper Saucy, a book called Rulers of Evil, and if you haven't read it, you have to. Very simple little quote. The Roman Inquisition, you've all heard of the Inquisition, has been administered and is still going on today since 1542 by the Jesuits. Remember that. It hasn't ended. It's just being carried out a bit differently. So, how much time do I got? Let me see. Only 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Well, listen, it's good to be back. I haven't been doing a regular show lately for other reasons. Hope to get back to some semblance of normality. And you can remember this. You'll always get more stories about the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order here, because you can't get it too many places other than here. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Spread the show around. And most of all, have a good time and love your family. See you when I'm back again on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.